Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen. Today we'll discuss the opening verses of Surah Mutaffifeen as has been explained by Ustaz Amin Ahsan Islahi. The text of these verses reads, وَيْلٌ لِلْمُطَفِّفِينَ الَّذِينَ إِذَا اكْتَالُوا عَلَى النَّاسِ يَسْتَوْفُونَ وَإِذَا كَالُوهُمْ أَوْ وَزَنُوهُمْ يُخْسِرُونَ, which means, woe be to those who weigh and measure less, who exact full measure when they take from others. When they measure or weigh for others, give less than due. So generally, people have interpreted these words to mean that people who weigh in such a manner for others that they are dishonest in weighing and measuring for others. But when they want others to weigh for them, then they exact full measure. So these verses actually show that the Almighty is very angry on people who weigh and measure less. And one of the Sha'n Nuzul which is mentioned vis-a-vis these verses is that when Muslims came to Medina, the Ansar were afflicted with this ailment of weighing and measuring less, and hence these verses were revealed to rebuke them. Ustaz Amin Ahsan Islahi has a different view. He first of all says that this occasion of revelation, this Sha'n Nuzul, is relates to the fact being, or the whole scenario being in Medina, whereas this surah itself is Meccan. So therefore, first of all, it cannot happen to explain something which was supposed to happen in Medina. And secondly, the narrative itself is not very strong vis-a-vis its chain of narration is concerned. Ustaz, on the other hand, says that these particular verses in fact portray a character. It is not just that they merely say that people who measure and weigh less for others and expect others to weigh and measure full for them. It's not merely this thing which is under discussion. Ustaz says that something which is much wider in connotation is in discussion, and that thing is that there is a whole character which is in discussion, who expects others to be good to him, and when his turn comes to do good to others, he might not be all that efficient and precise and good. And he says that this is actually apparent from the portrayal in this verse. Had the issue of weighing and measuring less being the only consideration in the verse, then in the surah, then the first verse was sufficient, which says, وَيْلٌ لِلْمُطَفِّفِينَ, woe be to those who weigh and measure less. But since the succeeding verses actually sketch out a personality, and they actually go on to elaborate that such a person would like others to be good to him, but when he does something to others, he might not always be at the same standard. So it is much broader than that. It is like saying that the awareness of justice is found in our own nature, in our fitra. We would not like something bad to happen to us because we dislike bad things. And this is proof enough to tell us that we like justice, we like equity, we like fairness. We would not like injustice. We would not like to suffer injustice, although we might inflict injustice to others. So this is basically telling us that our own nature, human nature, is a witness to the fact that justice is something that is found in us, which is innately found in us. And also the conception of oppression and the conception of injustice is also found in us, because we know that the two coexist. Justice and injustice. When we are aware of what justice is and when we like what justice is, we automatically know what injustice is, and therefore we dislike that because we don't want it to happen to us. And from here on, Ustaz goes on to say that we have to also understand that this love for justice and this dislike for injustice tells us or makes us realize that the just should always have a good fate and the unjust should always have a bad fate. But this does not happen in this world, not always. Many a time people who are unjust, they end up at the highest rungs of the society. And many a time people who are just, they end up at the bottom of the society. So this shows that there is something incomplete, there is something missing. And this in fact necessitates that a day should come when justice should be administered and the just people should get true reward, and the unjust people should be actually punished for this. Because this does not happen in this world, so there has to be some other day, some other world where this happens. So in other words, these verses, in fact, are a proof that man's nature actually tells us, it shows us that the day of judgment is something which our nature, which is ingrained in our nature. We would like justice to happen, but it's not happening in this world. Then there has to be another world where this justice is going to take place. So we can see that these initial verses are not merely, of course, they do condemn the fact that people who weigh and measure less, when they do it for others and expect others to do, to be wholesome to them and to weigh and measure in the proper perspective for them. But this is not the only thing. This is a very confined and a very limited interpretation, as has been explained earlier. Ustaz Amin Ahsan Islahi says that this is a portrayal of a character. It's a trait which people have, that they would not like to suffer. In other words, the golden rule that you do what you feel good, you do the same to others and don't expect that to happen to you, which is bad because you don't like bad. So this is just like saying that our own human nature is averse to these things, and hence our own human nature bears witness to a day of judgment. Ustaz Amin Ahsan Islahi has said that we have to, of course, interpret Quranic verses or interpret a group of Quranic verses in the light of their own content. We just cannot rely on external narratives. Of course, if they are in line with what the content says, they are acceptable, but if they present a contrary opinion, then they cannot be acceptable. In his opinion, the narrative which says that this is actually a rebuke sounded to the Ansar because they had this ailment or this malady does not hold water, because first of all, this surah is Makki, and second, the portrayal in itself tells us that it's not just weighing or measuring less or more which is under discussion. A very wide and a more comprehensive thing is under discussion. Surah Mutaffifeen is the 83rd surah of the Quran. Guys, if you have time, please pick up the last volume of Ustaz Amin Ahsan Islahi's translation. It is available on the internet, on the site of tadabburequran.org. If you go through this translation and this tafseer yourself, you're bound to find even more depth and details that I may have left out, and I urge you to do read it, and it will acquaint us how the Quran from itself tells us what it actually means to portray and what it means to communicate. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين والمسلمات.